The authorization was accepted, and the system moved into a state that looked complete but led nowhere. Production schedules remained valid, contracts stayed enforceable, and technical readiness was never revoked, yet the outcome never arrived. Somewhere upstream, beyond the reach of the people issuing commands, a dependency asserted itself without resistance or delay. What changed wasn't the machinery or the plan, but the location of control. This story begins at the moment a superpower realized execution now depends on permission it cannot compel. The first signal didn't come from radar or satellites. It came from customs databases inside China. Containers flagged, manifests cross-checked, chemical signatures that no longer matched declared trade codes. Rare earths routed through South Korea and the United Kingdom, long treated as safe detours, were suddenly traced, frozen, and blocked. Bloomberg reported in mid-October that this was not routine enforcement. It was a synchronized, state-level operation aimed at eliminating the last unofficial supply lines feeding U.S. defense production. Inside the Pentagon, the response was immediate and unusually blunt. Reuters later reported that internal Defense Department simulations showed multiple weapons programs could face material shutdowns within 90 days if flows stopped. Not years. Not after stockpiles ran dry. 90 days. The issue wasn't price volatility, it was access. A dependency once treated as manageable had turned binary. Beijing called the campaign Operation Thunder. Launched in late September 2025, it unified the Ministry of Commerce, the General Administration of Customs, and State Security under a single mandate: identify and erase disguised exports and re-exports routed through third countries. This wasn't symbolic retaliation, it was structural denial. Bloomberg noted that China controls roughly 70% of global rare earth mining and more than 90% of refining capacity, backed by reserves nearing 44 million tons, almost half the world's known supply. This wasn't a trade dispute. It was an invisible blockade. The timing was deliberate. Earlier in the year, President Donald Trump imposed sweeping tariffs, including a 34% levy on Chinese goods. Beijing's response wasn't loud. It was precise. The Wall Street Journal reported that China imposed export controls on 7 rare earth categories used directly in United States weapons systems: materials critical to missile guidance, radar-absorbing stealth coatings, jet propulsion, and submarine sonar. Officially, it was framed as national security. Functionally, it triggered the Pentagon's worst-case planning scenarios. For years, Washington insisted diversification was underway. New mines announced, processing plants funded, allies positioned as buffers, but customs data undercut that story. Between August and October 2024, China exported roughly 18,000 metric tons of rare earth materials, nearly matching the annual exports of every other producing country combined. By late December, the U.S. Geological Survey confirmed that 97% of rare earth imports into the United States still originated in China. To bypass tightening controls, American buyers leaned harder on re-exports through partner economies. South Korea became a central conduit. In the third quarter of 2025, South Korean imports of Chinese rare earths surged 137% year over year. Yet data from the Korea Institute for Industrial Economics showed domestic tech output grew under 5%. During the same period, South Korean defense exports to the United States jumped 213%. The imbalance wasn't subtle. It mapped the route. Supply chains don't disappear. They reroute until someone closes the exits. Operation Thunder closed them faster than expected. Chinese customs officials uncovered shipments of rare earth oxides sent to the United States disguised as cosmetic ingredients. According to investigative material cited by Cation and Global Times, more than 320 tons were falsely labeled as recycled consumer inputs to evade scrutiny. Documentation masked industrial magnets as low-risk materials. The shipments moved through South Korea, then onward. Samsung appeared uncomfortably close to the trail. While no formal charges were announced, investigators linked the flows to suppliers inside Samsung's materials ecosystem. At the same time, Samsung's S25 smartphone was marketed globally with claims of eco-friendly recycled rare earths. Investigative data suggested that more than 80% of those inputs originated from gray market flows crossing the Sino-Mongolian border before being laundered through third countries. At roughly $38,000 per ton, the disguised shipments were worth over $12 million, enough material to supply components for hundreds of advanced missiles or jet propulsion systems. China's response was public and calibrated. In September, the Ministry of Commerce warned multiple South Korean firms that disguised re-exportation would trigger sanctions. Strategic resources, it said, could not be hidden behind consumer labels. The warning wasn't about cosmetics. It was about leverage. Behind the spectacle was a deeper constraint. Reuters confirmed that more than 90% of all rare earth ores, even those mined in Australia or Myanmar, are refined in China. The ore can travel. The chemistry cannot. Refining expertise, patented separation processes, and industrial scale remain overwhelmingly Chinese. Washington spent billions backing rare earth processing facilities in Texas and California. Yet by the third quarter of 2025, the National Defense Industrial Association acknowledged that no U.S. facility could produce high-purity neodymium or dysprosium at commercial scale without Chinese inputs. In September, Beijing escalated further, launching a national rare earth traceability platform. Every shipment now required real-time logging of mine origin, export classification, end-user identity, and declared application. Rerouting through middlemen became exponentially riskier overnight. Here was the pivot no one in Washington wanted to say out loud. Even when the material wasn't Chinese, the system still was. The United Kingdom exposed how narrow the margins had become. Publicly, London criticized slow Chinese export approvals. Quietly, customs records told another story. Financial Times analysis showed that in the second quarter of 2025, Britain imported 40% more rare earth magnets from China than a year earlier, while domestic industrial demand rose only 15%. Analysts at Chatham House suggested much of the surplus was likely re-exported to U.S. defense contractors, particularly those tied to the F-35 program. Each F-35 consumes roughly 417 kilograms of rare earth elements. British firms denied wrongdoing. Beijing didn't wait for proof. On May 14th, China approved 3 new exporters, each bound by mandatory declarations detailing end-use and buyer identity. A Chinese official told the South China Morning Post this wasn't bureaucracy, it was counterintelligence. Inside the Pentagon, spreadsheets began replacing speeches. Reuters reported that Defense Department simulations showed most U.S. weapons production lines could stall within 90 days if Chinese rare earth exports were fully cut. The vulnerabilities were specific. Yttrium enables radar-absorbing stealth coatings. Gadolinium allows engine components to survive sustained temperatures above 1,500 degrees Celsius. Without them, an $80 million jet remains intact and operationally hollow. The Navy faced parallel exposure. A single Virginia-class nuclear submarine consumes more than 4 metric tons of rare earth materials. Terbium underpins sonar sensitivity. Neodymium magnets enable quiet propulsion. These are not optional enhancements. They are operational lifelines. The Wall Street Journal reported that as of October 2025, more than 87% of rare earths used in U.S. defense applications still traced back to Chinese refining. At one defense supplier in the Midwest, procurement managers quietly froze new assembly schedules. According to industry sources cited by Reuters, no announcement, no press release, just halted timelines waiting on materials that no longer had a delivery date. The machines were ready, the inputs were not. Washington searched for exits. Deep-sea mining resurfaced as a solution. Target zones lay more than 5,000 meters below sea level, with costs rivaling lunar exploration. A 2024 Government Accountability Office report found U.S. seabed mining technology lagged China's by, 2 decades. Even optimistic projections from the U.S. Geological Survey estimated a minimum $250 billion investment and a 10-year ramp-up, assuming environmental litigation didn't intervene. Other alternatives collapsed under scrutiny. Ukraine's 5 million-ton rare earth deposit lay mostly inside Russian-controlled territory. Greenland's reserves carried radioactive contamination, adding hundreds of dollars per ton in remediation costs, according to a 2025 Bloomberg investigation. Australia's mineral sands still required Chinese refining once shipped. In August, a Trump administration task force quietly acknowledged there was no scalable supply path that bypassed Chinese technology. Every escape route curved back to Beijing. Then came the final seal. In October 2025, China rolled out its national rare earth traceability system. According to China Daily and Customs disclosures, every exporter, refiner, and intermediary must now log shipment data down to the gram, mine origin, export classification, end-user destination, and corporate disclosure of application. The platform expanded beyond rare earths to include gallium, germanium, antimony, and tungsten, materials already critical to advanced weapons and semiconductors. China's General Administration of Customs estimated that more than $13 billion in unauthorized mineral flows occurred in 2024 alone. Enforcement shifted from ports to databases, from docs to algorithms. When data closes doors, diplomacy loses leverage. Rare earths stopped being a bargaining chip the moment traceability became mandatory. After President Trump's tariffs on more than 180 countries, Beijing's response wasn't broad retaliation. It was precision pressure. Bloomberg reported that the United States still imports 68% of its rare earth metals directly from China, with another 24% arriving indirectly through partners now under investigation. In October, Chinese authorities warned that strategic resources could not be used to subsidize hostile defense ecosystems, according to a memo cited by the Financial Times. New processing plants in the United States remained years from scale. Morgan Stanley analyst Derek Lee wrote in a November report that the defense sector faced a single point of failure, and that point remained China. This is no longer about tariffs, it's about leverage disguised as logistics. Stealth jets grounded without coatings, submarines compromised without silence, production lines paused not by bombs or sanctions, but by trace logs and compliance fields. Beijing didn't just flip a switch, it installed the circuit breaker. And if control over the materials of modern warfare is now proven, the unsettling implication follows naturally. The next pressure point may not be what goes into the machines at all, it may be the machines that make them. Nothing announces the moment control changes hands. The system continues to look complete, efficient, intact, even as its outcomes quietly stop appearing. Somewhere beyond view, a decision has already been absorbed into the structure itself, leaving no action to respond to and no failure to point at. Power doesn't arrive with force here. It settles in through compliance, and by the time it's noticed, the future has already adjusted around it. Please like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us grow. Thank you.